This commander-in-chief has no strategy. He has no vision. This is a situation of where he knows better than everybody else. He was told, you should get engaged in Syria 3 years ago by his national security team. He said no. His military commander said you should leave troops in Iraq as an insurance policy, and he got to no.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham slamming President Obama's handling of the crisis in Iraq. The president admitting on Saturday that he had underestimated the threat from these ISIS militants. Just hours later, he was seen on his vacation, which he left for a couple of days ago. He is on Martha's Vineyard. So Chris Wilson joins us now, the former executive director of the Texas Republican Party, and Stephen Sigmund is former communications director for former New Jersey Governor John Corzine. So you heard from Lindsey Graham there. He basically says that this president has no strategy, has no vision. Stephen, what's your response?
Look, my response is I think criticism of a president for foreign policy is fair. It happens, for every president, particularly the right wing for this president. But what's unfair is only criticizing without any real answers, and that's what Republicans seem to do over and over again. And let's not forget that the president's actions this weekend, at least at the moment, seem to be working. That the Kurds have pushed back ISIS in 2 cities in Iraq, and the horrible situation on Mount Sinjar, we've actually been able to bring relief supplies in there and open up an escape route. So these are very complicated, very difficult, and very fluid situations. And there's going to be criticism on the left and the right. The president's got to take action, but what the Republicans can't do is just criticize over and over again without offering answers.
The criticism is, in part, that this situation has been really going on for 3 years. That ISIS has been, on the move, has been developing and growing over the course of 3 years, and that to say that you're surprised by it or that the intelligence that you were given gave you an unclear picture of it, some people feel is disingenuous. But Laura Ingraham, who has not been a huge cheerleader for this president, to say the least, said this over the weekend.
I think it's really hard. I don't think you can judge how he did right now. I mean, we're almost in an impossible situation, right? The American people really have no appetite for America to re-engage. They didn't want us to go into Syria. Obama did want to go into Syria. That red line was crossed. We couldn't go in. The American people said no. The British people said no. After Iraq and Afghanistan, our own country, middle class struggling, people are, what are we going to do? What are we going to accomplish?
Chris, do you agree with Laura?
Well, I think it's a real danger when you start citing public opinion as your reason for positioning on foreign policy, whether it's Laura Ingraham saying that or Barack Obama saying that. And I think that's really the overall problem here is you mentioned Obama's foreign policy, and the challenge is I'm not sure he really has one. What it seems to be is a who can we blame policy. We can blame the Iraqis. They forced us out of Iraq. We can blame President Bush. It's still his fault. We can blame the intelligence community because they failed us. Barack Obama at some point has to take responsibility for pulling us out of Iraq, leaving us in a situation here that left the Iraqis vulnerable and has now created a cauldron there that is blowing up on us and is now forcing us to re-engage. And I think to go cite public opinion on that is really the wrong direction to go.
I think you raise a really interesting question for any president, really, because there's a point at which you say, I have to be guided solely by public opinion. And the president was elected in large part because he said he was going to get us out of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Exactly. And if you just looked at the polls, there was a lot of support for that. But at some point, Stephen, the president has to say, here's where I'm leading us because, and has to make the case to the American people and say, this is the situation on the ground. Because ultimately, what matters is the outcome. So if ISIS is quelled, if they are pushed back, if they are, if they're decimated by the actions that we take, ultimately, won't the American people say, that was a good move and that they're glad that the president took them in that direction?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the notion, it's Laura Ingraham that said that cited the polls, not the President of the United States. What he has said over and over again is that we should have limited actions where there are direct U.S. interests. And what the action they took on Thursday and Friday was related to the threat to the consulate in the Kurdish region. But look, of course, in the end, if things go well in this action, the American people, the public opinion will follow. But this president has never said that he's guided by public opinion or by the polls. He made promises based on what he thought was right in political campaigns, and in 2 presidential campaigns, the American people agreed with him.
Yeah, Yeah, but I mean, what happens when you pull out your troops, when you don't leave, you know, if you have no status of forces agreement, when you leave, you know, and there's a lot of question right now in terms of whether or not Afghanistan will turn into the same situation, because if you're ISIS and you're looking at what we've done in Afghanistan, are you not then going to say, gee, now we've taken a huge bite out of Iraq, a huge bite out of Syria. Afghanistan's looking pretty good to us now as well. Chris, let me let Chris weigh in, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, it really is, and I think that's the bigger issue here. Is that public opinion shifts based on presidential leadership, and that's the challenge. Is this president doesn't want to engage on foreign affairs? It's clear he wants to be a domestic president. He just wishes the world would, all these mean people out there would stop creating all these issues, so he could focus on the things that he cares about rather than having to engage on it. And as you said, he campaigned on getting us out of Iraq. That is now clearly the wrong decision because of what's occurring there. And now we've got other parts of the world that are just that are similar situations are happening. And to blame the intelligence community, that's the thing I find most disturbing here. Our failure in the intelligence community, any failure that occurred, comes from us pulling everybody out of Iraq and not leaving the intelligence community there to deal with it.
I'm up against a hard break. I got to go. Stephen and Chris.
The notion that he doesn't want to engage in foreign affairs is absolutely absurd when this president has engaged
He proves this time and
for
again.
years.
Thank you, gentlemen. We got to go. Good to have you both here. We'll see you next time.
And Martha, coming up, some really bizarre weather interrupting